What if I told you that you could take the exact same Airbnb property you have right now and make 20, 30, or even 50% more revenue without buying new furniture, without remodeling, and without spending a single extra dollar on marketing? It all comes down to one thing: pricing strategy. Because here's the truth: most hosts are unknowingly leaving thousands of dollars on the table every single year. And it's not because their property isn't good enough, it's because their pricing is all wrong. In this video, I'm going to walk you through powerful Airbnb pricing strategies that will help you maximize your revenue and keep your calendar booked with the right guests at the right price all year long. We'll start with some beginner-friendly tactics you can implement right away, and then I'll take you into the advanced strategies that the top-performing hosts are using right now to crush it in their markets. We'll be covering some powerful strategies to drive more revenue for your Airbnbs, and you can try to implement these manually, but it's going to eat up hours of your life and literally drive you crazy. So, what's the right way to implement these strategies? Use a dynamic pricing tool, and we recommend Price Labs. They've actually been kind enough to sponsor today's video. This is the same tool we use for every single property that we own, from single family homes to our hotel, and I'm confident it's made us significantly more than we ever would have dreamed of relying on Airbnb smart pricing alone. And Price Labs is offering a pretty cool 30-day free trial and then 10% off of your invoice. Head over to hello.pricelabs.co/TheRealEstateRobinsons, or click the link in the description of this video if you want to grab that discount. Now, before we jump in, let's quickly cover why a good pricing strategy is so important. Pricing is not something you can set and forget. Pricing is something that constantly has to be monitored. You're making changes, you're looking for feedback, and then making more changes. And according to Airbnb, listings at updated prices at least 4 times a year achieved over 30% more nights booked. Now, look, I know 4 times a year sounds like a crazy low bar, but you'd be surprised how many hosts set one price for the weekday, one price for the weekend, and then never look back. And that maybe is an extreme case, but there are probably even more hosts who maybe set prices by the season. They set one weekend and one weekday price for winter, another for spring and summer, another for fall, and so on. So rates change a little bit throughout the year, but mostly they pretty much stay the same. We call that strategy static pricing. And static pricing is a surefire way to leave money on the table. And that's because when your pricing is static, there's a good chance that you're undercharging on days when demand is high and you're overcharging on days when demand is low. But the goal of pricing is to think like Goldilocks. Not too high, not too low, but just right. Price too high, your property sits empty. Price too low, you're fully booked, but still somehow losing money. You want to find that sweet spot where you balance your average daily rate and your occupancy to maximize revenue. And the right pricing strategy allows you to do that. Now that you know why a good pricing strategy is so important, let's cover what factors influence your price. And really, there are 2 types of factors. You have external and internal. External factors are things outside of your property. The most important external influence are the comparable properties in your market. Look at the other short-term rentals that are most to yours in terms of size, location, design, amenities, because those are the properties that potential guests will look at, and then you just need to track how they're pricing. All things being equal, guests will oftentimes go with a cheaper option, so you can't be 50% more expensive than the other properties that are similar to yours. The second external factor are your guest demographics. If you have a beautiful, luxurious 10-bedroom property in a market that caters to wealthy travelers like Aspen, where listings can charge $5,000, $10,000, $20,000 for a single night, you've got a high ceiling on your pricing. On the flip side, if you took that exact same 10-bedroom property and put it in Davenport, Iowa, where the vast majority of listings are making less than $10,000 a month, let alone $10,000 in a single night, your ceiling is much lower. The third external factor is events. Sometimes events come into town that have big impacts on ADR. We live in Southern California, and when the Olympics land here in a couple of years, we're going to see massive price increases for Airbnbs, but it'll be short-lived. A more practical example would be a big concert coming into town or like big sporting events. So those are the external factors that drive pricing. Now, the internal factors that influence your pricing are things that you can directly influence. So the first internal piece is your property's occupancy. Occupancy is always a good sign of how well you're pricing. If you're fully booked for the next 12 months, but your comps are only booked for the next 6 to 8 weeks, there's a chance you're underpriced. And the inverse of that is true as well. If you're sitting empty, but all of your comps are booked solid, there's a chance that you're overpriced. Your goal is to use your pricing so that your occupancy is mostly in line with your competitors. The next internal factor that'll influence your pricing are your recent reviews. If you get hit with a bad review, 3 stars, 2 stars, or even the dreaded 1 star, that can impact your rankings on Airbnb. And one way to offset that bad review is by slightly dropping your pricing. Airbnb has not shared much about their algorithm, but one thing they have shared is that bad reviews can pull you down in your rankings and lower prices can improve your rankings. So use pricing as a tool when needed. All right, now we've covered what influences your pricing, so let's get to the good stuff. Here are the 8 strategies every Airbnb host should know. The first 4, again, are more beginner focused, and the last 4 are a little bit more advanced. As we cover each strategy, we'll also highlight how easy it'll be to implement that strategy within Price Labs with a quick screen share. So let's jump in. Strategy number 1, last minute pricing. This one is pretty simple, but the idea here is that as you get closer to an open date on your calendar, the chances of that date getting booked start to decrease. Most travelers plan ahead for their trips, so there are simply more people looking to book a place for a trip that's 30 days out than there are people looking to book a place for a trip that's tomorrow. So the strategy is to add a heavier discount for any open dates in the very near future. Your goal here isn't necessarily to maximize how much you can charge, but just to get the date booked, because sometimes some money is better than no money. Okay, so I'm inside of Price Labs right now, and we're gonna go over the last minute pricing. So if I search last minute, I can see the customization here. And right now, like I said, we don't actually use this because we're using the occupancy-based adjustments, but let me show you what it would look like if we were using this specific customization. So first, you can do just a fixed dollar amount. So if anyone books within the next 7 days, I just want them to pay a flat $200 per night. Or I can go flat gradual, where anyone within the next 7 days gets a 25% discount. Or I can apply it gradually. And what this means is that gradually over the next 7 days, it'll apply this 25% discount. So this is flat, meaning every date over the next 7 days gets the same 25% discount. Gradual means that tomorrow, if it's available, they'll get the full 25%. And the 25% is equally divided over those 7 days. So, if you take 25% divided by 7, that's the additional percent that gets applied each day after today. You'll be able to see this in your pricing calendar as you apply it. Then there's no last minute discount, right? Just nothing. You've got market driven, where Price Labs is going to make its own determination, conservative, aggressive. So those are all the different ways you can come into Price Labs and apply the last minute pricing. Strategy number 2 is far out pricing. It's the opposite of last minute pricing. With strategy 1, you're trying to maximize occupancy, but with far out pricing, you're trying to maximize revenue. With this strategy, you actually charge a higher price for days that are far out into the future. Now, for example, if someone wants to book a date that's 4 months into the future, they end up paying maybe a 10 or 15% premium to secure that date. And the reason this strategy works is that even if no one books at 4 months out with that premium price, that's fine, because we still have a really good chance of someone booking our property at the normal rates when we're 30 or 60 days out. So the far out pricing is a way to say, if you really like my place and you want to make sure you can book it for your dates, you have to book in advance and spend just a little bit more. Okay, next we're going to look at far out pricing. And you can see there's 2 options here. There's far out prices, and then there's the ability to customize far out prices, or just set like a specific far out price. And I'll show you both of these. This is the one that I was referring to. Right now we have it set to no far out prices, again, because we use a different way to customize those, which I'll talk about in the advanced settings. But it's the same thing here, where you have gradual or you have flat. So it's the inverse of what the strategy 1 was. So after, say, anything after 90 days, I want to apply a 30% premium over 30 days. Okay, so, and it tells you here, after 120 days from today, the premium will be 30%. So that means on day 90, it's taking this 30% divided by 30 days. So every day we get 1 additional percent added to the price. Okay, or I could do the same thing where it's just flat, and I say anything over 90 days, apply a flat 30% premium to those prices. So again, you can see how adding these allows you to have more control over your pricing without having to go into your calendar on a daily basis to make those changes. With the first strategy of offering big last-minute discounts, you might be worried about giving your property away for dirt cheap. But luckily, there's a solution for that also, and it's to set up a minimum price. And that takes us to strategy number 3. This setting basically allows you to set the lowest price you're willing to offer on your property. That way, you can let things like the last minute discount run automatically without worrying that you end up giving your Airbnb away for pennies. Each person has to choose how big of a discount they're willing to offer. And yeah, it probably doesn't make sense to drop the price on your 7-bedroom chalet for, like $70 a night, but setting a reasonable minimum price will keep your property booked and revenue coming in. Strategy number 4 revolves around orphan gaps. An orphan gap is an open night on your calendar that doesn't meet your minimum night stay requirement. For example, if your minimum night stay is set to 3 nights, and say someone books Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday, someone else then books Friday, Saturday, and the following Sunday. Now you've got 2 open nights, Wednesday and Thursday, that are wide open. By default, both of those nights will get blocked, meaning no one can book them, which means you won't make money on those nights. But what if you're actually okay with a 2-night stay in that specific scenario? That's what the orphan gap setting allows you to control. You can set it so that anytime you have an orphan gap, you can automatically adjust the minimum night stay to equal the size of the gap. So in the example we just gave, you'd set your minimum night stay to 2 nights. So someone would have to book both Wednesday and Thursday. Or say you have a 4-night minimum and you end up with 3 nights in between 2 longer stays. You'd automatically set your orphan gap to have a minimum night stay of 3 nights. Okay, next we have orphan gaps. And you can see here it's under your minimum stay settings, we have orphan gaps. And you have the ability to say, within a gap that's between 1 and 2 days. So our default minimum stay for this property is 3 nights. So that means if, again, just like the example I gave you, if someone had a weird 2-day gap in between 2 3-day bookings, they would get blocked. But with this, I can automatically set any gap between 1 and 2 nights to just be the gap length. So if I have a Tuesday and a Wednesday open between 2 bookings, it'll automatically adjust the minimum night stay to be 2 nights. If I have just a Wednesday in between 3-night bookings, it'll automatically adjust the minimum night stay to 1 night. So again, guys, sounds super simple, but in terms of time saving, incredibly huge time saving. So under your minimum night stay settings, look for orphan gaps. You can set it up there. All right, we've covered the 4 basic pricing strategies, and honestly, those 4 with, just like regularly checking your pricing should do a lot of the heavy lifting for you. But if you're someone who wants to really fine tune their pricing, then stick around for the 4 advanced strategies. And we'll start with strategy number 5, which is seasonal pricing adjustments. Every market has natural highs and lows, peaks and off seasons, and that's where the custom seasonal profiles, or aka your pricing profiles, come into play. These let you set different rate rules like minimum price, base price, and max prices for specific date ranges automatically. If you're using Price Labs, it'll automatically adjust your prices up or down based on seasonality. But maybe you want to really try and maximize your revenue during peak season, so you increase your base price by 10%. Or maybe during slow season, you really want to try and get your weekdays booked, so you drop your minimum by 20%. Without this pricing profile strategy, you'd have to manually go into the dates and add the discount or the price increases. But with pricing profiles, it happens automatically. And we've personally built out different profiles for peak season, slow season, and literally every major holiday. All right, next, strategy number 5, seasonal profiles. Now, you'll see here that we've got, again, like I said, we've got holidays, winter, all the different seasons are built out into our custom seasonal profiles. And with each season, we can see what we're doing with our base price. For this specific market, January is a very slow month, so we're actually decreasing our base price by 10%, and we keep that. Now, this is a busy season during summer. So during the summer months, we actually increase our price by 5%. We increase our price during Labor Day. We increase our prices during like the Christmas holiday by 10%. Thanksgiving, we increase our prices. So this allows us to have one base price, but then dynamically make adjustments. So all you have to do is come in here and you can set the percentage-based increase. All right, on to strategy number 6, which is seasonal minimum night stay adjustments. I know it's a mouthful. This strategy is similar to strategy 5, but instead of adjusting your pricing by the season, you're adjusting your minimum night stay requirements. As an example, during Thanksgiving and Christmas on our 5-bedroom cabin, we want to try and push for 7 night stays. So during that time of the year, we could either manually adjust the minimum night stay to 7 nights, or we can use the minimum stay profiles to do it for us automatically. The strategy is so helpful because it increases your chances of making more money. Let me give you guys an example, right? Let's go back to the Christmas example. If you have your minimum night requirement set to 3 nights during that week of Christmas, someone could book just December 23rd through December 25th, right? Or maybe the 24th through the 26th. Now, your prime Christmas dates are gone, but you're left with this awkward open nights before or after their stay. The percentage of people looking for a 3-night stay right before or right after Christmas is smaller than the number of people who want to stay for a long stay throughout that entire week. So you either A, end up with those extra nights sitting empty, or B, having to discount them heavily just to try and get them booked. But with the right minimum night stay for the right time of year, like keeping a 7-night minimum over Christmas, you protect those high demand blocks and maximize your total revenue for that season. All right, and next for our seasonal minimum stay adjustments, this is what it looks like here. So this is our holiday strategy for our minimum night stays in the Smokies, and our default stays are pretty similar here. So what you'll notice here is that our far out bookings we're holding for 5 days on anything outside of 90 days. So if someone's looking to book Christmas, again, 90 days out, which is not uncommon at all, we're forcing them to book at least 5 days. And as we get 60 days away from Christmas, we drop it down to 4 days. And then anything under 60 days, we default to our standard 3-day minimum night stay. So these are those adjustments that I mentioned that allow you to really try and make sure you're protecting your big holidays, your big moments, to get those longer, juicier bookings. And it saves you the ability of having to do this manually. We can just apply this minimum stay profile to all of our different holidays. And if I go back to our custom seasonal profile here, you can see that every holiday, New Year's, we've got the holiday setting. MLK weekend, we have a 3-day weekend, which is similar to a holiday with some small nuances. Easter, we've got the holiday minimum stay profile here. So you can see how we leverage this throughout the year, and it gives us the ability to have the same consistent thought process without manually going into each one of those dates. Strategy number 7 is one of my favorite strategies, and it's setting minimum weekend prices. Maximizing revenue for your Airbnb is a balancing act, again, between occupancy, how full your calendar is, and ADR, how much you charge per night. Again, guys, I could fill my calendar completely. I could have every day booked by giving my property away for $1 a night. I'd get to 100% occupancy, but I'd make nothing. And on the flip side, I could brag about having a $2,000 ADR, but if I'm only booked 1 night out of the year, I'm still not making much money. So it's the revenue that we're trying to optimize for. And one of the trickiest things that hosts have to figure out is balancing their pricing for the weekends, which obviously tend to be busier, with their weekdays, which tend to be slower. Price Labs already allows you to set a minimum price. We talked about that earlier. But oftentimes, the minimum price is okay for a Wednesday, but not for a Friday or Saturday. But with this strategy, you can set one minimum price for weekdays and a separate for the weekends. This allows you to drop your prices more aggressively on the weekdays where, there are just less guests looking to book, but still protect revenue on the weekends when demand is higher. It sounds like a small nuance, but I'm telling you, it makes all the difference in maximizing revenue. Okay, so next we've got our minimum weekend prices. So again, if you just search weekend in your customizations, you'll find it here. You can select your weekend days. So for this specific market, we count our weekends as Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And we have the ability to say, hey, for my weekends, I want my minimum price to be no more or no less than, $250. So now, even if my weekdays drop all the way down to $99, my weekends will always be protected here. And it's as simple as toggling this on, selecting the dates, and setting your price. And strategy number 8 is occupancy-based adjustments. It's the advanced version of last-minute pricing, so we actually use this instead of last-minute pricing. With occupancy-based adjustments, you're able to look at a specific block of time on your calendar. For example, let's say between 14 days and 30 days out from today, you can then calculate the occupancy just for that specific period and then apply discounts just to that block of time. Let me give you an example. Let's say today is January 1st, and I want to add an occupancy-based adjustment that's only applied for 30 to 60 days out. 30 days from today would be January 30th, and 60 days out would be March 2nd. And let's say that February is a busy time of year. Maybe I'm in a snow or a ski market and February has great snow. So I know that by January 1st, most of February should be booked out. With occupancy-based adjustments, I can automate things like adding a discount if my occupancy is below the market occupancy of 70%, or adding a price increase if my property's occupancy is above market occupancy. And I get to choose what those occupancy levels are. So it could be 5%, it could be 10%, it could be 30%, 80%. It basically gives you more control over how you are pricing your property according to its occupancy. Now, I will say this is a more advanced strategy, and you can easily underprice or overprice your property as you roll this out. And I'm saying that from experience. So start with small adjustments and then change from there. But I'll also say it's one of the biggest time savers. Once we implemented this, I didn't have to spend as much time going into Price Labs and manually adjusting the prices on specific dates that I was trying to get booked. All right, and our final one, occupancy-based adjustments. So search occupancy, you'll find this setting inside of Price Labs and your customizations as well. And Price Labs gives you some default options for occupancy-based adjustments. There's aggressive, far out premium, last minute discounts, super aggressive discounting. And then you can also go custom. Now we've got custom ones built out for our own portfolio based on what we see in our market and how our properties typically perform. But let me just show you what some of these look like. So if I default or select aggressive here, and I click edit profile, it brings up this table. And this table says that for between 0 and 15 days out, if my occupancy is less than 10%, I'm going to apply an additional 30% discount. If my occupancy is less than 20%, well, I only want to apply a 25% discount. And you can see how it steps up. And if I'm at 80%, I'm only going to apply a 5% discount. And if I'm between 81 and 100, I'm actually not going to apply a discount at all. So you can see it gets really aggressive with discounting between the 0 and 15 day time frame. Now, on the other side, 31 to 60, if I'm less than 10% occupied, I'm only going to apply a 15% discount because I'm not as concerned about those dates getting booked. So this is the aggressive. If we look at like the far out premium, this is doing the inverse, where we're not discounting, but we're adding higher prices. So if someone books between 90 to 180 days out, they're going to pay a 60% premium above what our standard price would be. If they book between 6 months and a year out, it's a 120% premium. So far out premium does that. Super aggressive discounting, you can see it's just bigger discounts when occupancy is lower. And then you also have the ability to do custom, where you can clear all of these out and add in your own. Now, the benefit of this, again, is that you get to adjust your pricing to control for your occupancy without having to literally go into every single date and make those adjustments. And that's it. Those are the 8 Airbnb pricing strategies that can help you boost your revenue, fill your calendar, and make sure you're charging exactly what your property is worth. And again, if you want to try Price Labs and start implementing these strategies right away, remember, they're giving you a 30-day free trial plus 10% off of your first invoice. Just head to hello.pricelabs.co/therealestaterobinsons or check the link in the description of the video. Now, hey, let me know, which of these strategies are you going to try first? Drop your answer in the comments. And if you found this video helpful in any way, make sure you hit subscribe, turn on notifications so you never miss our next video. That's it for today, guys. I'm Tony, she's Sarah, and we are the Real Estate Robinsons.